Okay, we're back, and this week we're looking at Oops, You Did It Again expansion. So we've got some interesting mechanics in this expansion. This is certainly one that's a bit out there, and I know it's quite divisive, this expansion, certainly with some of the factions. So let's just jump straight into it. We've got Pharaoh up against Viking Funeral. It doesn't look very clear to me on the images, but I don't know, that's just my scans this time. But anyway, so who wants to say that Viking Funeral should be the winner here? Nobody?
Yeah. I don't know. It's quite hard for me.
It says gain a VP, Mark. How
It
can
does
you
say
not
game
see
one.
what's
Yeah.
going
It does say
through?
game one VP.
The thing they've tried to nuke it in a couple of ways by saying it has to go on a power 5. So realistically, unless you're paying superheroes, you're only going to get 2 minions that you can put it on, and then it wants you to. Well, it doesn't want you to, but it will make you put it back in the box to take it completely out of the game. There's not that second bit probably doesn't affect you too much because the likelihood of playing through your deck in certain factions is tricky. I mean, it does in ones with lots of draw and things, but not necessarily in a standard smash up combination. So the second bit is a little tiny bit relevant to me. It obviously wants you to try and nick someone's minion, put this on it, get the VP, and then it's gone. But I think Pharaoh's, like many of these factions, Pharaoh is part of the engine that lets you do the extra mechanic. Uncovering the buried cards and drawing cards is always strong. He suffers from the fact that he's almost adding power to the base that he's on, so he won't necessarily be around for a very long time. But I think he is still good. I feel like there's too many limitations on Viking Funeral for it to win this round, personally.
Yeah, I mean, there are limitations on it, but for me, it's not as good as Pharaoh in this round. And I love cards that say gain a VP, but this is certainly one of the weaker cards that say gain a VP. And as you mentioned, Vikings are quite well set up for this card, though, because they've got the 2 power 4 minions as well. They've got 1 card that lets them gain power. So as long as the minion is at 5 power at the point you want to play it, it's fine. So I think even if the minion drops back down below 5 power, then I don't think it really matters because it's all about the condition of playing it.
Yeah, fair enough.
So it does it's not as hard to get it into play as it might seem, but it's nowhere near as good as Pharaoh. Pharaoh is just such a good draw engine. The special as well is just like icing on the cake. You know, we talked about some really good cards in this series, and the special is really limited by how good, you know, your best card in your faction is that you want to bury, basically. So, you know, if you want to bury a full sail, if you want to bury your terraforming or something like that, you can do that and then uncover it with the Pharaoh before the base scores and just completely cause havoc. Okay, it has some setup in terms of needing to bury the right card for the Pharaoh and that situation, but just the draw engine, you know, power 5 minion, big minion, and then as well the added bonus of being able to uncover something before the base scores as well is just icing on the cake. So for me, it's Pharaoh rather than Viking Funeral.
Yeah, I think you both said everything the same, and I would agree with Pharaoh winning over Viking Funeral. I think Luke really hit the nail on the head for me, where it suggested that the plan with Viking Funeral, as I see it, is that you would steal another minion and then play this on that minion to be able to send that minion to the discard. Well, not to the discard pile, of course. Sorry, back to the box. It's a very drastic sort of end solution for it. But yeah, that would be how I see the benefit of Viking Funeral playing out, and I just think that's harder to pull off than the like you say, the draw engine of Pharaoh. I'm going to struggle within this this entire faction though, because I haven't played with any of these particularly a great deal. Vikings probably the most, only really because Luke absolutely hates the Vikings. So in terms of cards, I've always been drawn to want to play the Egyptians, but again, with the burying mechanic, I know we've talked about some mechanics kind of just getting in the way of the game a little bit. And I like the burying mechanic actually, as far as the faction and a bit of a uniqueness goes. But it's always just seemed to be a little bit more complicated than just a casual game needs to be, as far as I'm concerned. And again, when you've just got a couple of guys around that don't know the game like we do, trying to explain to them how to bury a card and how that all kind of works is just a little bit on the extra. So when it comes to this sort of stuff, for me, I kind of knock Pharaoh down a few points because ultimately it just ends up being a bit more complicated than it really needs to be, I feel. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the nice thing about burying is you can, with a little bit of trust in your group, you can just go off on your own.
Yeah.
You can kind of just go, look, trust me, I'm not going to cheat. I'm going to do all the actions and do this and that. Whereas dueling and madness and other things, that they need a little bit more of a buy-in from the other people. And like you say, it's not always the best thing if you're playing with as many people as you can, or more casual players, to teach them some stuff. But burying is slightly better than dueling, in my opinion, because you can just get on with it and it doesn't affect other people that much. It does a little bit, but you can just play.
Yeah, with burying, the complexities on you, whereas with dueling, other players might have to be involved with it, and then you have the whole explanation process, and I think dueling is a bit of a mess. I think burying's fine. I really like burying. It's just basically banking extra plays. That's all you have to kind of think of it as, and you can reveal an extra play at the start of every turn. I mean, it is complicated in terms of it does add that layer of strategy and another kind of level to it. But I think it's certainly. I mean, they all have their own little thing in this. So Vikings are stealing things as well. So this is certainly a more complex expansion, certainly. But for me, it's dueling is the worst of the bunch and the most complicated to explain in this expansion.
They've done a very good job with the themes of it and incorporating that, but probably taking it a little bit too far.
And I like that. They always do seem to whole hog. If they're going to go for one particular type of mechanic, it is whole hog. It's not done by halves.
No.
So
no.
I agree. That might be an interesting idea for another set of videos for you, Mark, when you get when you're getting a bit bored, maybe explaining some of the core mechanics of the game that are perhaps a little bit different.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it could be a good one.
Tutorials.
No, you've got to squint to really read all the text on Dynamite Surprise. It's a very wordy card, but that's what we've got next: Dynamite Surprise and Honourable Combat. So, who wants to? I mean, this is another card that says gain a VP on it. So, who wants to take this one?
Just talk me through the second bit. So, if another player's card reveals or looks at the card in your hand or deck, destroy one of their means of power, in what context would their card reveal or look at your card?
So if someone plays,
or is this mid dueling?
No, that's not to do with dueling. That's so someone plays like Banned List, or there's a card in this one for Vikings called Cast the Runes, where they get to look at your hand and then look at the top two cards of your deck. If someone does something like that, then they can.
Fine, you can wait till they do it
one of
and
them
then play
basically.
Fine.
Yeah, so it's pretty good. Even just going back to the base, back to the core set. If someone plays Mass Enchantment from the Wizards and looks at the top card of your deck to potentially play it as an action, you can just use Dynamite Surprise to kill their Archmage.
Yeah. There's a few that spies cards. I think there's the Geeks cards, maybe. Fine. So basically, you get 2 opportunities to destroy a minion of power 4 or less when they look in your hand, or when you have a minion and not winning. But Honourable Combat says gain a VP.
True.
You have to win, though. You have to win. It relies on you not losing the duel.
Yeah, that's the risk, isn't it? I mean, this feels like a gambler's card to me. But you should be set up to beat them.
I mean, neither of these cards are particularly good, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You're either trying to destroy something, but not necessarily when you really want to, or you're potentially giving your opponent a victory point. It's not honourable combat. It's never going to be honourable combat, in my opinion. The risk-reward factor for somebody just terraforming your card away, or I know that's an extreme, but the risk-reward factor for basically giving somebody a free victory point on your turn, no thanks, I'm not interested in that. Give me Dynamite Surprise.
Nuke them to heaven.
I'm inclined to agree.
blow them to smithereens instead.
Yeah. Or destroy potentially 2 of their power 4s, if I understand that card correctly. Yeah, I'll take 2 of their power 4s away, please, and potentially win that base and get myself 3 victory points, rather than perhaps maybe giving you 1.
Well,
And then,
it's one of their
you know,
power 4s, but you've got 2 different chances to kill it.
yeah.
I think that's what gives it for me. It's such a versatile card. I mean, you could remove the entire second part of that Dynamite Surprise, and it's still a decent card because we've seen other specials where you get to destroy a minion before a base scores, and this one increases the power to 4, which is really good, and that includes a lot more minions like Vigilantes, Archmage, stuff like that would usually be out of the power cap range. But then you even add on that little bit of bonus in terms of if someone even just looks at your hand, you can just destroy one of their minions. I think that's just a nice little bonus there, and you got it spot on with Honorable Combat. It's just way too risky. The chance that you lose it is just too high for me to even consider that as a good VP gaining card.
We've spoken multiple times on the idea that I want to play my game. And certainly the way I play, I want to play my game. I don't want to play anybody else's game. So if I have a choice in this series of a card that relies on me or relies on somebody else, I'm going to go for the one that relies on me all the time, every time.
And it's got a really strange, like you have to choose a base where another player has more power than you, and it might take you ages to actually get that situation.
Yeah.
It's a really strange condition to have on the card.
I guess it has to have difficult to achieve conditions because it's giving you a victory point, which, as we've discussed in the past, is essentially exceptionally powerful. It's the aim of the game at the end of the day. So it has to have dodgy conditions in order to be able to actually achieve it. But to me, it seems unnecessarily convoluted for when you compare it to something like an Invader, for example, which you just have to play on the field. So.
Well, we've got it on the card over the other side of the screen for Samurai, which is basically Bushi, which is just getting a VP, which is way more straightforward than this card is. So
the Samurais annoy me. I always want to really like the Samurais, and it's not that I think that they're bad, because I think I've seen games where they've been particularly quite good actually in terms of how they've been played, but I feel like there's just something missing about them. I'm never really excited when I've got them in my hand, and I never really feel like there's a particular card that I'm really keen on getting out or a mechanic that I'm kind of building towards. It's kind of like that they've kind of half done dueling. I think personally they seem to me like the weaker of the 4 in this expansion.
Yeah, Cowboys
going to work well with Hydra when Hydra come.
Well, Hail
What's
Hydra.
the space? Hail Hydra.
I mean, Cowboys definitely do dueling to the max, whereas Samurai, they have like a little bit of a nod to dueling, but they don't really have all that many cards that are involved in dueling.
Yeah.
Right, so on the other side of the screen, we've got one of my favourite cards of the game in
Sheriff,
Valkyrie up against the Sheriff. And just in terms of art appreciation as well, I mean, Valkyrie is just unbelievable for card art. Okay, so I mean, I'll kick us off on this. I'll go with Valkyrie, obviously, because you can take any minion in the entire game and put it into your hand. So, think of all the good minions we've talked about in this whole series, and you want any of them, we'll just play Valkyrie and pick it up from your opponent's discard pile. It's an amazing card. Whereas Sheriff, I mean, we've talked about, dueling just a second ago with Honorable Combat, and yes, the Sheriff is quite likely to win the duel, and Cowboys are set up to help, their cards win duels. But there is always the chance that by giving your opponent a free action play, they can just do something completely crazy, completely out of the box, completely unexpected, and the whole, not only do you lose the base, or you maybe lose a base over there, or something crazy happens and you end up losing the game just because you've given them a free action play when they didn't even need to have, or then they weren't able to have an action play. So I think, again, just dueling it. Okay, yeah, Sheriff in a lot of circumstances will just be destroy a minion before the base scores, and that's great. That's like playing Hidden Ninja into Ninja Master, but it's just a bit risky, whereas Valkyrie is just really solid value. Okay, you have to wait for a bit to get the good minions into the discard pile, but once that happens, you can pick up someone's King Rex or something, equally good, someone's Pharaoh or whatever it might be, and not only deny them that, but you get the benefit of it. So for me, it's an easy one.
Yeah, I
mean,
completely agree. Yeah, I completely
yeah.
agree. My issue again, and you've hit the nail on the head with Sheriff, is that the fact that it opens up other players to be able to play a free action. You're giving them half a turn for free unnecessarily, and even if they basically know, like you said, that the Cowboys are basically set up to be able to destroy something that's going to be on that base. So, yeah, you're almost guaranteeing that the Sheriff is going to be able to destroy something. So you are getting that benefit from it, but you're also losing a potential opportunity. Someone could full sail everything away. You never know what someone is going to play down in the duel, and that's what I don't like about it. I almost feel like the duel should be capped to power increasing actions rather than what it is, which is essentially whatever you want to play down. It doesn't have to have any relevance at all to the duel. So I just don't like that. But I do really like seeing Luke's face when you take his king minion out of the discard pile. So give me Valkyrie all day long.
Imagine
And
if
for that
you're.
reason, I vote Sheriff.
I voted. Imagine if you duel, you're playing against alien ninjas or something as a combo, and you duel one of their minions before the base scores. They play down crop circle, bring everything on the base back, and then they drop down a shinobi and just solo the base just from you dueling them when they didn't even have any way of doing that. I mean, that's how risky something like Sheriff could be. So yeah, too risky. We all agree on Valkyrie.
I do like I like the aggressiveness of it, though. I do like that whole idea of, well, I'm just going to shoot your minion in the face. I'm a big fan of that real aggression play that the Sheriff allows you to do. But
you're absolutely right. It should have been power increasing actions as a restriction. I would have rather seen it being minions, but
and this
the
is
way
what
it is
I
at the
don't
minute.
get. So you see cards like Honorable Combat that we've just been talking about. That's overly convoluted, unnecessarily difficult to set up. You see cards like mechanics like what Sheriff is basically trying to get you to do, where they seem to have really overthought one section and then really just kind of gone, oh, that'll do, to the other section. It frustrates me that there's that level of difference between the game.
Oh, now we have this is a good fight. This is a really good match.
You think
I'm gonna take Mummy. And
okay.
I think you all know why. And if anyone's watching the series, it feels a lot like First Mate to me, and I'm here for that. I am here for that all day long. Oh, the base is scored. Oh, I'll just keep that guy around and pop him on another base, shall I? That's very nice. And now that base is scored, I'll pop him on this other base and bury him over here. Okay, it takes a little bit of a turn to uncover them all, but if you get them all out, you can spread them around a little bit. Oh, lovely stuff.
Do I understand correctly that as they get buried, they lose their power counters?
Yeah. You're not making it. You're not adding power counters to it. So it's not as good as First Mate, but then nothing is. So it's But
it's interesting. I don't even know if that question. I say it doesn't lose its power counters, but I don't know if I could give you a definitive answer to that. I don't know if that question's ever sort of been.
I get the feeling
I don't think it does.
It gets flipped over and goes back under, because you have to flip it to bury it, don't you?
Yeah.
I think when it gets flipped, it loses whatever's on it. That's how I feel about it. In a gentleman's game, that's what I would expect to see. But playing against you guys, who knows what happens? So
you're still adding power for essentially free.
Oh yeah.
I do like Bushi, but you probably need to pair it with something that can consistently up its power permanently. Add a power counter, or there's a lot of cards that give you temporary power, but you need to time them, do them at the right time. If you can dot some power counters around, maybe with Mad Scientists or Kung Fu Fighters or the Giant Ants, then I think this is where you get your value. But there's only 2 of them in the whole thing, so you're pretty much getting 2 victory points if you can go through your deck once and manage to pull it off at the right time, which is nice additional, but it's not as strong as something like Invader, where you have repeated access to those victory points. There's only 2 copies of those, but you've got so many ways to get them back and play them again.
Yeah, Invader is a clean gain of 1 VP on playing it, whereas Bushi is dependent on at least one of the cards to make sure it has 5/1 power. The Samurai do have, a few cards that can give power counters out and increase the power of their minions. So in the Samurai faction, the Bushi, you shouldn't really be playing Bushi down until you can give it a way of, giving that +1 power counter. So in theory, this card will always give you a victory point as it goes into the discard pile, which is, it's pretty good. This is probably as close as you get to an invader as a minion, because it's pretty much guaranteed to give you a VP when it goes to the discard pile. But it's very delayed value for doing that, whereas invader is obviously immediate. You're getting the VP straight away. Bushi could be around for a while before the base breaks. It might get moved around a bit, so it's not guaranteed. But I think for me, it will go to Bushi just because the mummy is just your first mate light, basically. So it is just a mobile 2 power, and you still have to uncover it. So if you moved all 4 of your mummies, it's going to take you 4 more turns to actually uncover them all again to make sure that you can cash in on the first mate style effect. So I think for me, it goes to Bushi.
And I think an undiscussed part of this is that it costs you that reveal to get a mummy back, when really you want to be revealing other more powerful cards. Theoretically, I guess you don't always necessarily need to have them, and I guess you've got other cards that allow you to gain power for every berry card you've got. So I guess it could, in some ways, sort of counter for that. But no, I think I have to agree with Mark. Unfortunately, to me, it seems like a poor man's first mate, and it seems like a kind of worse version of Tenacious Z, where you can't just get it straight back out the discard pile. You have to physically kind of play it almost as a berry card. So I kind of see where the appeal is, and I completely agree with the sort of quality of the fact that it's, unless it gets destroyed, it's not going anywhere. But it's shark fodder to me. Bushi's better.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. Is as soon as you uncovered it, it's then vulnerable as a 2 power minion. The first mate is also vulnerable as a 2 power minion, but the aim of playing pirates in the first mate isn't to.
Yeah,
you don't partner pirates with a faction that can't. Yeah, it doesn't stay 2 for long. Whereas you're not pairing Egyptians with a faction that tries to buff up the power of your mummies. It's not the same kind of thing, is it? So. For me, it's Bushi. Yeah,
the victory point wins it for me.
Yeah,
but I get the appeal. And I like it. Again, it's a nice gimmick that they've kind of put into the set, and it's in keeping with some of the other cards that we've got, like you say, like the first mate and like a Tenacious Z, and in that kind of vein of cards. So I like to see that sort of thing.
Okay, so the first semi-final, we've got the Pharaoh and Dynamite Surprise. So who wants to see?
Feels like an easy one, this.
It does feel like a bit of an easy one, this, doesn't it? We're all thinking Dynamite Surprise, yeah?
You'd be surprised to find out.
Ooh.
Yeah, Pharaoh.
Yeah, Pharaoh's it's just a better card. There's more for it to do. It's the draw engine. It's the engine behind the Egyptians. It is cooler in terms of card art. I mean, who doesn't love giant wings on the back of a chair? For me, it's Pharaoh.
Yeah, I agree. I like Dynamite Surprise, but I think it's sort of run its course against one of the better king minions in the game, really. So I think for me, it's Pharaoh as well. I do like the fact that I think it's the only card in the game that has double special text, which I think is really interesting. I think that's a really cool thing that they could look to do more in the future.
Yeah, it is nice, but it ends up, it might as well just have one. They could have put 2 cards in that had one of each text, and it wouldn't be that different.
Yeah,
I know it's slightly different, but you're still only using it once, which is the thing. But yeah,
it's just more versatile, isn't
it?
It just gives you more options. I mean, we've seen cards that let you destroy a minion before a base scores, but they added that little bit of extra sort of flavour to the name of the card and things like that.
It's nice. It's nice that you don't have to wait for that particular opportunity, so you feel like you get an extra opportunity to use it, which I think is better for a card that is worth destruction. There's not enough of destruction cards that are like that. There's too many of them that do require a bit too much of a criteria. I guess because it's a powerful mechanic in the game. But
it's your one counter to the Vikings as well, isn't it? In that if you're getting really frustrated with a Viking player and they try and look at your hand, you can just go, no, you're happy having none of that, and they destroy one of their minions. So it's kind of like a nice little relief from the Viking pressure, I suppose. So over the other side, we've got Valkyrie and Bushi. And this is a really
As
interesting,
well.
really difficult.
Yeah.
You think this is an easy one for you?
Easy,
I think it's an
easy for me too.
I'd be interested to hear what you're saying then. What do you think?
Well, me and Luke are going to be on
On
opposite
three.
sides of the coin on this one.
Are
So
we?
go on. Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure. Let's go on 3.
3, 2, 1. Valkyrie.
Valkyrie. Oh, well, there we go.
Oh, you
Nice.
both on Valkyrie. Okay.
Yeah. As much as she's annoying to play against, that's why she is fantastically powerful. That's why she's so annoying to play against. I'm over here minding my own business, and you're out here just robbing whatever minion you want, having a little finger through my pile of cards and
People
seeing what you
forget.
fancy.
People forget as well. People forget that she's there, and all of a sudden it's like play down, blam, and you've got a plan to maybe cycle through your deck to pick that minion up again. No, that's my minion now. That is my minion. Yeah, 100% Valkyrie. It is one of my favorite abilities in the game because it's quite unique in so much as it basically gives me your card. And especially if you're playing with something like zombies or whatever, to be able to get more use out of that. Yeah, I think it's
there's a huge swing actually. Not only adding that card to your deck, essentially giving you an extra card and a strong minion to play down, and probably a power 5 with a good ability. You're also depriving them of the opportunity to reuse it or use it again, or shuffle back into the deck or pick it back out themselves. Particularly on something like zombies, where you can do that all the time. If you can steal some of the power 5 minions that have won some of these competitions, it's an absolutely huge advantage on your side, and you take away from them. So
you could if you steal a pharaoh, you've killed the draw engine for the Egyptians.
Yeah.
You've killed it.
Great Worm would be another fantastic one to steal.
Yeah, exactly.
And it gives you a really good follow-up play as well. In that you play Valkyrie, the next turn you've then got a very good play from hand if you do need to play. If you don't have a follow-up play.
And don't get me wrong, Bushi's fine. But again, the Samurai's classic fallen for the is okay.
If I were building
excited to play it.
If I were building a custom, like a proper faction, like aiming for a power counter based faction, and Bushi would definitely be in there in the power 4 slot, because I think that ability is very, very strong. Being able to gain that free VP, and that's what the game's all about. So, okay. The final then, we've got the 2 king minions in the final. So Pharaoh up against Valkyrie. Now, is this going to be a close one, do we think?
Well, I'll go. I'll go. Yeah, I'll start with this one, because to me, there's a key difference between these two that are basically going to win my vote. And that is essentially that Pharaoh relies on buried cards to be better. And again, I think we're suffering a little bit from the Monarch complex here, which is something that comes up every now and again when we talk about these cards. I think that inside of its faction, it's obviously the engine, it's obviously the amazing card, and I'm not saying that we would ever play it outside of its faction, but in the context of this competition, which is looking for the best card, I think Valkyrie is one of the best cards, and I think that's why Valkyrie deserves to win this competition, because it doesn't rely on anything else. It's inherently exceptionally strong on its own, and like we've just said, my favorite thing about Valkyrie is not necessarily that you get the ability of the minion that you're going to steal, which is inevitably going to be a good ability. It's that your opponent doesn't get it, and that to me is more valuable. You can cripple a faction. You can literally cripple a faction by taking it away. Imagine taking the Monarch, for example. Who wants to play the Rockstars? Who wants to play the Rockstars without the Monarch? Who wants to play the Rockstars without Monarch? They're awful.
I love that argument has come full circle now.
You take the Monarch with Valkyrie, and then you take the groupies with Shield Maidens, and you gradually build up your own Monarch with the groupies.
The rock stars.
Tie that argument in a nice little bow and finished. Thank you very much.
See, that's interesting, because I know when we have this Monarch style debate, I lean slightly more towards your position, Lee, in terms of coming down on the side of being good in the context of the wider game, not just in the faction as well. But I think for me, Valkyrie, it suffers from two really bad timing problems. Firstly, in that obviously the minion that you want to take has to be in the discard pile. So you not only have to wait for that moment, but you have to wait for them to draw that the target minion or a really good minion that you want to steal. So that could be quite late in the game. Not only that, but then once they've played it, it then has to go to the discard pile. Once it's gone to the discard pile, they've obviously used a lot of the value of the card anyway. Maybe they've broken a base, maybe they're close to winning. So you taking their minion at that point in the game might not be that great as it stands. So it suffers from some pretty problematic timing problems, I think. It's a fantastic card. It is a really tricky one because it is my play style is being disruptive and sort of stealing things, and I really like the Vikings as a faction. I just think that this isn't necessarily. It's a card you have to hold on to for quite some time as well. That's part of the timing issue as well. You have to hold on to it in order for them to then actually put the minion in the discard pile. Whereas for me, Pharaoh it's just a fantastic card in the faction. As you say, it's a great draw engine for the faction. Not only that, but then you can get that special, the before the base scores effects as well, which could be, it could be really good. It could be taking control of a minion. It could be destroying a minion. It could be full sale style effect. It could be any number of things. So this is a really tough one for me. I'm more inclined to go Valkyrie just because of how good it is universally, how good that effect is when you do get to play it. But then I'm more inclined towards Pharaoh because of the whole timing problem with Valkyrie. And I think that's a really big, concern for me in terms of putting Valkyrie as the winner. So I'm willing for Luke to convince me towards Pharaoh here.
Well, for me, it's interesting you talk about the timing problem because I don't think Valkyrie has a timing problem. I think it's more of how greedy is the wrong word, but how much you want to maximize Valkyrie's value. Her flaw is that you take a minion off them, you gain an extra card for a temporary amount of time, and you gain something off them no matter what. You are definitely gaining by taking something off them and putting it with you. If there was a card that was strong enough, as important enough to their faction, you could take it and just keep it in your hand and just keep it away from them. If it is that important to them, if it's their engine, it might be worth it to you to never play it and just take it off them. And if you're playing in high player counts, you've got that option between more players. So the other side of it is if you are in a 2-player game, let's say, and you have Valkyrie and you're always waiting for their minion to steal, if it never goes in the discard pile for you to steal, then it's probably not really ever been on the field for them, which again has probably meant that they're at a disadvantage against you because they haven't played or been able to use or find their best minion, the one that you then want to steal. So I think she achieves value even if she doesn't hit the absolute pinnacle of stealing the best minion that is available in the game that you're playing, and then you playing it and getting that value. I think she achieves a lot of value without necessarily using her maximum value every time. So for that, and I do like Pharaoh, don't get me wrong, I like Pharaoh. I love the fact that you can flip another mummy and bring another mummy back into play, and that might help you hit your 3 or 4 or however many you can get. Or do a full sale or terrible, whatever you're playing with as your huge swing play. You can play crop circle and bounce everything back up, and then put stuff back down if you can, and nick a base and do all sorts of shenanigans from it, from the special of the card that you uncover. But as well, it's just giving you straight draw. I mean, there are easier ways to draw cards, particularly in King Minions. If you look at like Yokozuna or the Kung Fu Fighter, I think let you draw on it anyway. But I'm ultimately going to decide on Valkyrie, and I'm probably going to try and play Valkyries a bit more so that I get on her side a little bit more, because I'm always on the receiving end of being robbed, and my God, does it sting when it happens to you.
Let me just get this. Let me just get this straight. Luke, you're not voting for the Monarch style card.
No, and my argument with the Monarch card, the Monarch debate that we have is, okay, you play Monarch, and you need to consider it with all the cards that it has in its faction, because it will always be played alongside those cards. Okay, 50% of your deck might have no interaction with him whatsoever in any meaningful way, but he will always be played in a deck that contains the groupies. So that's my argument with that. So considering him outside of the groupies is a bit redundant, considering interacting with the 50%
meeting's about to finish, by the way, Luke.
Right, as I was saying, Valkyrie wins. Pharaoh, Monarch, see you later.
Fair enough. If you guys both putting Valkyrie through, then I can say no more.
I think I managed to get my final point across when I was just shouting Valkyrie into the microphone. I think that pretty much summed it up. But
there was one thing you mentioned there about the what's he called, Yokozuna. This draws a card every time it's uncovered, so that could happen several times in a turn. Whereas Yokozuna's obviously just once per turn. So
true.
You can potentially draw multiple cards with it. But if you guys
have
got
it set up, assuming you've got it set up to that point.
Yeah, and Egyptians do have other cards that let them bury and uncover cards. So, but if you guys are both putting Valkyrie through, I think it's a fair pick. I mean, I like it.
I like Pharaoh. I like Pharaoh. It's a good card, but Valkyrie, the deprivation of somebody else's minion on them is just too great. It's too salivating. I'm just like, I can take a card off. Oh yes.
I think it's going to be really interesting in the Champion of Champions, because if Valkyrie ever comes up against another minion, you can always just say, well, Valkyrie can take that minion. So Valkyrie is better than any other minion in the Champion of Champions.
No, because that's just not true. But
if you want that minion, well, Valkyrie will just give you that minion. Like Valkyrie is power 5 plus that minion. That's all you have to do. Invader. Okay, Invader is 3 power gain a VP, but Valkyrie is 5 power plus an Invader. Yeah. Right, that's how it is. So,
yeah, but a good player's not letting an Invader go to the discard pile, is he?
Well, you might not have a choice, in fairness. You might not get a choice. You play them Super Spies and just discard them Invader before they get a chance to play it.
I have played against Super Spies Vikings far too many times. When we have a friend who just wants to annoy us all, and he will play that, and he will annoy us all night. The game will move nowhere.
I often talk about Wizards being the kind of faction that they do absolutely loads, but don't really gain anything. They just seem to be playing multiple play and extra action goes every time. You draw through your deck and then think, God, there's no cards in there that I actually want to play, so I'm just going to draw through the deck again. Why not? But the Vikings Super Spies are a perfect combo for the player that wants to do loads of things but not actually progress the game in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. You end up exactly where you were when you're finished. You've just pissed everybody off.
One thing we didn't mention, actually, then you just mentioned it there, was Valkyrie is obviously an on-play ability, which is quite rare for a King minion, but you pair them with, I know people like Time Travelers quite a lot as a pairing for Vikings, but you play your Valkyrie, you steal a minion, you play Do-Over, you play Valkyrie again, you steal another minion, you keep replaying Valkyrie to just keep on stealing minions. You get a lot of value. Get a lot of value from stealing a lot of their cards.
That is very nice.
That is saucy.
Yeah. So Valkyrie has it. We've got a winner, and as I say, it's going to be tough competition in the Champion of Champions. Valkyrie, I think. Let's hope it doesn't get paired up against an action in the first round and it's getting knocked straight out. But any minion,
terraforming, boom!
If it gets an easy run of minions through to the final, it wins. I think
we should pair it with Eliza, shouldn't we, in the first one, just so we can get rid of Eliza nice and early.
Just a nice easy win, a confident
easy win. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just give Valkyrie a little leg up on the competition.
But you guys are gonna draw the final, so it's all up to you really. I've got no influence on the draw, so we'll do that
soon, isn't it?
Do that at the end. Once we finish, we'll do a draw at the end.
We're not far away.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. It was good. Do you have any closing thoughts, or are we wrapping it up?
I'm just looking at the board. It's pretty weak generally, apart from Valkyrie and Pharaoh. It's a pretty weak, and Bushy to a certain extent, but it's a pretty weak board as far as I'm concerned.
Bushy.
Yeah, I think. I suppose it's by design, isn't it? Because they've obviously introduced 3 very different things here, and they have to make sure that they dedicate so much of the faction to supporting the gimmick.
Yeah,
that they can't really make anything stand out, I suppose. But Valkyrie certainly, Valkyrie and Pharaoh are certainly standout cards.
Mhm.
Okay, great.
Better than
Well,
Marley.
thank you very much for joining us. We've not got many left now, so we've only got 3 left to go, and then it's the big one. So we'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
See you later.
Titmouse.